All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over some of the course material for the AWD1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases class. I have previously done about 75 lectures on the PowerPoint presentations for the book for the class, that being Murox ASP.NET 4.6 C# 2015 6th edition. Then I went over some resources for Model View Controller and mentioned that I was going to go over this class that I took online that's called Create an ASP.NET MVC Application in an Hour. All right, and I'm going to attempt to replicate these steps: design a database, generate the data layer with the entity framework, create a user interface, and then customize it. I won't do it exactly the way the author did it here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the way the author did it. Okay? Again, I would strongly encourage that you go out to udemy.com, that's udemy.com, and sign up for the class. Not only that, I should mention this, okay, that I went out to, in fact, let me just show you. I've got an account with Udemy, so udemy.com. If you go out to Udemy, in fact, I had 3 of them, and I now have 2, but that's a longer story. And if I go out to udemy.com and I search for courses and I type in ASP.NET MVC, okay, that's all I'm going to put in here. And I'm going to get several pages worth of courses. There's about 10 per page, and it looks like that's got at least 5 or 6 pages worth. All right, 5 pages worth. Now, when you look at these, notice that I can drill down in here, so I can filter, and if I click on price and I go to free, there's 7 free courses. I would strongly suggest that you sign up for this course that's ASP.NET Quick Start. I've been going through it, so mine's going to look different than yours would. Notice I've gone through 11 of the 65 lessons. All right, and what that gentleman does in here is he basically, in his getting started, mentions that he found a job posting that was online for a company that he said was very unique. In fact, let's see if I can find it here. I don't like to put videos inside of my videos. But what this was the impetus for what this course creator has done. He found this job ad online. He blacked out things that were irrelevant, or maybe he felt like it shouldn't have been there. But it says this was a job listing, I think on Indeed.com, for an awesome ASP.NET MVC software developer. You were supposed to create your own application, a simple CRUD app that stores persons with the following fields: first name, last name, city, and zip. Then you were supposed to write the application, deploy it to a publicly accessible URL, and then send the URL in. Now that is pretty cool, because what that's saying is before we're even going to give you an interview, you have to prove yourself. And that's kind of the way that IT is going today, at least in many aspects. So throughout this course, he builds this, which I thought was pretty cool. Like I said, what I've gone over thus far is the introduction, the job posting, how to install, and I've seen this many times from many different authors, how to make sure we have MVC. So he creates a bare bone, simplistic MVC project. Then he creates the project. It's interesting, though, as you can see, I'm in the middle of the setup and configuration. What he does is he goes in after he creates the MVC project and he removes the contents folder, which has got his CSS in it and his images, and he also removes the scripts folder, which has his JavaScript, his jQuery, and his Bootstrap. Then he goes back and he creates them himself by going out to the jQuery site, to the Bootstrap site, etc., and adding them in that way. Then he goes out to the Bootswatch site, which has free Bootstrap themes, and he grabs a Bootstrap theme. And he says you can grab any one you want. He just grabs kind of a generic one. Then he goes out and he finds a jQuery plugin called Get Tables, which allows you to do a lot of work with tables. Then he comes in and does very minimal site.css. That's his own site file. Then in the bundle.config, which I haven't gone through yet, but what he's going to do in there is he is going to combine all these files that he put in and show how to do that by hand, so to speak. All right, then as it says, he'll fix his layout.cs HTML and run the app. He gives you his code as he goes on. He goes into source control then, authentication, and he does his authentication through Facebook, which I again found interesting. He creates the models, he creates the views and the controllers, he goes through and works with the entity framework. He does some work in there to make the app a little more user-friendly and a little more aesthetically pleasing. And then he talks about how he can make the site even better. So there are 65 lessons in here, so I've gone through approximately 1/6 of it. Again, ASP.NET MVC Quick Start, it was free. The gentleman who presents it, his name is Brian Gorman. Pleasant enough speaking voice. And he says that he created this particular application because he was out looking for a job. And he thought this was a cool thing, the app that he creates. So he decided to not only create it, but to tape himself creating it. It's free. You can't go wrong. All right? So it's time to get back and start doing this one. That said, I've wasted 7 minutes doing this, but I'm just going to plug on. All right? So how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to come in and start up Visual Studio. And I'm going to create, before I even create a new project, okay, I'm going to come in and with Visual Studio up, but no project, again, I'm following the lead of this guy who wrote this Create an ASP.NET MVC app in an hour, all right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go File, View, and I'm going to go over to SQL Server Object Explorer. And in here, it's got all the stuff that I've been working on for other things. And don't worry about what it is. It really and truly doesn't matter. I made this task list database yesterday, and that's what I'm dealing with, but I'm going to recreate it right now. So I'm going to come in here, and under Databases, I'm going to right mouse click and choose Add New Database, and I'll call it Task List Database. Much longer than I need. And please look at this location because this will become important later. I'm going to grab that location. In fact, I may have it already. There it is. I think that's the exact same location. Yes. Okay. So I'm telling it that I want this task list database. Boom. So notice I've got now task list database right here. So this is my start. I'm going to right mouse click on this and I'm going to say, in fact, let me open it like that. There we go. So I opened it. Now I'm going to right mouse click on tables and click. So what's in there for tables right now? There are system tables. There are basically whatever the system created. External tables, there are none. So here under tables, I'm going to right mouse click and choose add new table. Again, I'm following the lead from this author. All right. So how am I going to do this? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my task table. Okay? And I'm going to give all these very descriptive names. So I'm going to call this task ID. Okay, and you can see that I'm going to make that a primary key, and you can see that it's also creating it down here. It's going to be an integer, and since it's a primary key, of course, it cannot hold null values. Null meaning unknown, and we will not put a default in there either. So The next thing will be the actual task. We'll call it task title. All right. That will be an nvarchar, which means it'll be a variable length field, and we'll make it, I don't know, about 20 characters long. I think that'll do. Not 250, 20 characters, and that can't be null. All right. After our task title, we'll have a task description, and I'll just call it task desk. This one will be a little longer, so nvarchar, we'll make it 50, but that one can be left blank. All right, then we'll have a task due date, and that'll be a date field. And we can leave that open too. Maybe we don't know, so we'll leave that. You could have nulls. And finally, we'll have a task priority. And you'll see what those are in just a minute. And that'll be an int. So what I've done in here is I have created a table that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. All right, a task ID, and that task ID, as mentioned right there, is our primary key, so it can't be null. We've got a task title, which is a variable length character field, maximum size of 20, which can't be null. We've got a task description, which is a variable length field of size 50, which can be null. A task due date, which is a date field, which can be null. And a task priority, we don't want that to be null either. All right, we want to make sure all of our tasks have a priority. All right, now you can do weird things in here where you save the file, etc. I found it's easier for me to come in here and in this part literally just type in here tasks. All right, so I've changed the name. Now I'm going to walk and click right here, update, and it's preparing to update the database. And I'm going to tell it to actually update the database. So notice I have a tasks table now right here, and this is its format. All right, so this is what I've done thus far. So I can now close this. Okay, and I've got my DBO tasks. I want to create one more table. So I'm going to add another table. This one I'm going to call priorities. All right, and I'm going to have only 2 fields in it. The first field is going to be the priority ID. It will be an integer. It will be the primary key. My second field will be the actual priority description. It'll be things like, is it a high priority, a low priority, etc. Now, I'm going to make it bigger than it has to be. I'm going to make it an nvarchar, and I'm going to make it of size 20. And neither one of these fields, all right, neither one of the fields can be null. Okay? All right, so I've done all that stuff. It looks like everything is looking the way I want it to look. So I'm going to again click Update here, and I'm going to tell it to update the database. And I now have two different tables in my database. All right. Now, what I forgot to do and what I want to do in here is I want to go back. I'm going to close this, and I want to bring back up my tasks table. All right. So I double click on it. Brings it back up in here. Same thing we just saw. But what I want to do is I want to create what's called a foreign key. So I want this task priority that's in here to be the same thing as the priority ID in the tasks table. All right, and the author shows you a way to do it. I couldn't get it to work, but what I had to do was manually do it. So I have to type go here to tell it to run that command first. Then I have to do an alter table, and the table that I want to alter is tasks. All right. And I've got to remember. Let me pause for just a minute because I want to give you the right syntax. In fact, I'm going to just, that wasn't long. I had written it down previously. So I'm altering the tasks table, and I'm adding a foreign key. Okay? I want that task priority that's right here to reference the priorities table, the priorities ID. Okay? So I'm going to tell it to update my database. Hopefully I don't get any errors, and I'm going to tell it to update. If I don't get any errors and nothing funky comes up on the screen, that's a good thing. So why did I do that? It'll make more sense when I actually run this, create this, and then run it in just a couple minutes. So for lack of better words, you have to bear with me until then. All right? Now, what I want to do is I want to totally close down SQL Server. It's still up and running. So let me show you what I want to do and the problem that I encountered. Not the same problem the author had. So now I want to come into a file, new. Now I'm not going to say website. I'm going to use a project here. And I'm going to choose ASP.NET Web Application Project. And let's call this Tasks. I don't think I've got one called Tasks. I'll find out right away. And I'm going to click OK. What happens next is it asks me what kind of project I want to create. I'm going to create an MVC project. I'm not going to do any unit tests, but I'm going to check that anyway. And I don't want the authentication. So by default, when I run the project, it's going to have 5 tabs. Towards the left, it'll have a Home tab, followed by an About tab, followed by a Contacts tab. Then towards the right, it'll have a Register tab and a Login tab. I don't want those, so I'm going to click Change Authentication and put in No Authentication, and just click OK. All right, I don't want to host this in the cloud. I'm not going to worry about it, so I'm just going to remove that. And I'm going to click OK. The project is now being built for me. So what you're going to see over here in just a moment are all the different files that are going to be built. All right, so this is my application as it currently stands. And I've got a bunch of references here, but the key things or the key takeaways are I've got it set up for a model view controller. I've got a controllers folder with a home controller.cs file in it, a models folder with nothing in it. I've got a views with a bunch of home stuff in it. I've got a shared, we're going to look at all these. I've got my content, which has got my own CSS file and the Bootstrap CSS stuff. I've got the scripts, which has got the Bootstrap JS and the jQuery JS and Modernizer and Respond and a few other things. Now, I'm going to just see if make sure that this app works, so I'm going to click Build and tell it to build the solution. And if down here it says that it's building it successfully, and I'm not sure what I'm getting down here. Oh, there it is. It's got build succeeded. I'm going to close this. All right, so there's my build, and the build succeeded. Okay? All right. So now when I go in and run this by clicking right here, the project's not going to do much right now. All right, it's not going to do much. Okay, we're going to add to that in just a bit. So right now, notice I don't have that login and register, and that's because I deleted that from here. I've got a home page, which is right here. It's bootstrapped. In other words, notice that it sets up real nice. It's responsive. I've got a simple about page, which is also responsive, but literally doesn't do much. And I've got a contact page, which again is responsive, but again doesn't do much. All right. Now, the problem is what I want to do in this project is I want to come in here, stop the run, and in my app data folder, I want to right mouse click and choose add and I want to add an existing item. And what I want to do is I want the system to go out to right here, which is where that database lives. So I'm going to click in here. Again, this is not the way the author does it. His is much more seamless than mine is. And I want to find my task list database, these two files, and I want to add that one. And it says I can't because it's in use. And then when I do the other one, the same thing will happen. All right? How did I get around that? I'm going to show you in the next video.